I want you to imagine going to your dream property on a whim only to find a pipe burst and a flood has damaged every single part of the house. Well, that's how this story starts, and I'm going to tell you about a project in Whistler that I'm working on that's turned into a bit of a nightmare, but finally, we're turning a corner. The only reason I found this flood in time was because I went up on an absolute whim out of the blue, and I just happened to have a feeling that I need to check on the house and just see how everything's doing. I walked through the front door, and it was obvious right away. There was water everywhere. I'm splashing through it with my boots. My heart sank, and it wasn't just a light little flood. It damaged the insulation, the walls. It even worked its way through 3 levels. It had been flooding for days. I had no idea what this was going to mean in terms of a rebuild, but I was expecting to be a renovation. It ended up being an absolute gut down to the studs, and it's been a brutal build ever since. Because this was a flood, insurance had to get involved right away, and if you've ever dealt with an insurance claim, you'll know how extremely difficult this is, and how most of it is just a game of who can outlast the other before the other person just gives up, because it's that complicated. In addition to it just being a battle with them, they ended up dropping off stuff way too early because they don't understand how long it takes to build in Whistler. And they simply just told us that we're taking too long and it should have been done sooner. The project seemed off to a somewhat good start with a contractor who was capable of building a good home, but things got messy really fast, and that's where the interesting story comes in. At first, everything seemed more or less fine. The house was progressing until I started seeing some red flags. Invoices weren't always being delivered. I found some errors in tax calculations. Some of the charges were vague. There was never a full description of why he needed money, just that he needed it, not only a lot of it, but he needed it right now, otherwise the project would stop. There was a lot of this kind of threatening vibe going on. Once I dug into the books, it got way worse. I was finding inappropriate markups on subtrades working for him. Like I said, the tax calculations were wrong in many instances. Excel spreadsheet had many errors. I even found line items from completely unrelated jobs. Pretty much every nightmare you can expect in a build. Now, of course, we had to let the guy go, but by then we had spent almost $500,000 on this build. We managed to find a great contractor, but by then a lot of the damage had been done. And then it comes to dealing with the city, something I've learned a lot about. Now, let me tell you about how one insulation mistake ended up causing us 7 weeks of being delayed. There's a new insulation code in Whistler. It's a very cold climate, so you need R28, which basically just means really high quality insulation. However, it's an older house. They have framing that's 2x6, and R28 insulation doesn't fit in that. You'd think the simple solution is just to squish the insulation, fit it in the wall, call it a day. But no, of course, as soon as you squish insulation, the R value actually decreases. So of course, the city rejected that idea. Now we figured a solution. It's actually fairly simple. You squish the insulation, then you add some ISO board to essentially top it up. But with the city, of course, it can't be that easy. The city of Whistler requires everything to be submitted by paper. So I was literally driving between Staples, going out to meet one of my engineers in Langley, driving it to Whistler, dropping it off at the city, printing multiple copies. It's something that none of the contractors I worked with could really believe that a municipality was still operating like that. It took a lot of extra time to do this, but every time you submit some kind of response to the city, it takes them at least 2 weeks to get back to you. And a small error is still an error, and it means it's 2 weeks plus 2 weeks plus 2 weeks. We had a designer who was not the most experienced. He made a lot of mistakes. Even though they were small, each tiny mistake added up, especially when you have to drive to City Hall with stacks of paper in hand. We eventually figured it out, but it was on standstill for a week. Now, we're finally moving again. Now, the fun part of building a house is when you get to start choosing design and color. And we have a unique situation where there's this large beam in the house that's kind of ugly, but it's structurally very important. Now, we can't move it, so the best thing we can do is try to use it. Specifically, my fiance gave us an idea, something she saw in a New York penthouse that actually used tree bark to disguise a beam. So what we're going to do is try to do something that makes this look like a natural element in the house and turn something that's kind of ugly, kind of annoying and in the way, hopefully into a feature of the house. I guess that's kind of a symbolic part of the whole project of turning a disaster into something beautiful. We've now chosen paint colors, siding's coming off, all the drywall and everything's done inside. We're getting appliances dropped off in a couple of weeks. Hardwood floors are going down, tiling is going down, and we're really finally in the home stretch. After getting rid of the old general contractor, which is something we should have done way earlier, the new general contractor is the best. He's been so organized. His team loves working with him. I've never seen so many people on a job site before. When as the old contractor, we'd have a couple people at a time maybe. We now have like an entire army working on the house, and we're absolutely not only flying through, but his invoices are clear, easy to understand. He's very organized. Team loves him. He's just great to work with overall. And I can't say enough how important it is to have a general contractor who you trust. Somebody like me, I'm a finance guy. I get the numbers, but when it comes to contractor work, I'm not an expert. Yeah, I can do some of it, but you need somebody in your corner who's going to make sure you don't get ripped off. And that's exactly what this guy's doing for us. Now, this project started as with a flood, went into an insurance claim, which is still ongoing. We've had just about every problem you could have with the house, but we're turning the corner now. And it's going to be a really profitable project too, because with insurance covering, let's say a little bit less than half the build cost, because we are doing some elective upgrades that they will not cover, The lift in the property value is actually substantial if we were to ever try to rent this house out. If you ever looked at a monthly price for renting a house in Whistler, it's insane. It actually makes no sense. I'm talking like 20, 30, 40 grand plus, no problem. Who are the people paying that? I have no idea. That's a whole other ball game. Some royalty, I suppose. This project started with a flood. With insurance involved, it just made it more complicated. Learning how the city of Whistler operates made it even more difficult. Though, I'll give a shout out to the staff there. They are very talented. They're just following the rules. It's just their systems are so antiquated and they are under-resourced. But it's in a municipality that's probably not too keen on getting many more things built. There's a lot of that NIMBY attitude up there. So in spite of the fact that I'm sprouting gray hairs weekly now because of this, ultimately it's been an amazing learning experience. Hopefully you learned something from this as well. I'm not done, so I'm going to be posting more videos. If you want to see what we're doing, by all means, subscribe and follow along. I'm looking forward to the next update for you.